Hey everyone, so today I'll be covering my Sorcerous team, and the footage I'm showing you is from a 7-round tournament. So the team I used was Azumarill, Alolan Muck, Frostlass, Claydol, Bronzong, and Venusaur. I would say Venusaur and Claydol are definitely some of the more anti-meta picks. I ran Sludge Wave instead of Gunk Shot on Alolan Muck. I ran Ice Beam and Play Rough on my Azumarill, and I was using a Mud Shot Claydol. Everything else was pretty standard movesets. Okay, so getting to the matchups, my first opponent actually is running kind of an interesting team, and this is before Beedrill Community Day. So after you see the video, Beedrill will have Drill Run, but in this current video, there isn't Drill Run yet. So this is kind of an interesting matchup with Claydol because these Mud Slaps, I think, are doing neutral damage to this Beedrill. However, Beedrill is pretty glassy, and I am resisting these Poison Jabs, so I am going to double shield right here. Don't know if it was the best decision, but I'm only down one shield, and then my opponent does a quick swap into Alolan Raticate. And so the Azumarill moveset I went with was Ice Beam and Play Rough, and I thought the Hydro Pump is actually pretty useful in a lot of matchups, especially against the Dark Poisons. However, because I'm running Mudslap Claydol, that's essentially a pretty useful Dark Poison counter for my team, so I'd rather run with the more spammier Ice Beam variant. Especially against certain Frostlass situations, you might want to be able to bait. This is a pretty good situation for me. Even if this Claydol is taken out, I'll be able to finish it off with Alolan Muck. And so luckily I was able to take it out before they saw the Alolan Muck, because having that third option hidden is going to play, it's usually useful information to have hidden for future matchups. Okay, so my opponent does a quick swap, and then in this situation I swapped to Frostlass, and because I swapped in late, I will have to spend both of these shields to take out this Alolan Muck if they shield, and so they do shield. And so I'm going to shield this right here, and then drop the Avalanche. Unfortunately, it's an Acid Spray, so that's not great, but I do overfarm a little bit here, and then hoping to drop Avalanche. I was kind of trying to switch at that point, but then I realized I couldn't do it quick enough, so I'm just going to drop the Charge move instead. And then from here, I could potentially farm down, and then luckily they brought Bronzong, and so because they didn't know I brought Alolan Muck in the last one, they might have felt that it was a safer pick, but Alolan Muck should be able to handle this Bronzong pretty easily. I'm only going to show the first two matches of every match if the third match isn't relevant, just to save up on some time. But so this one is concluded. Alright, so going into my next matchup, and so as you can see, Claydol actually has pretty solid matchups against Dark Poisons, Bronzong, Toxicroak. My team is very anti-Toxicroak. I've got Bronzong, Azumarill is kind of a iffy matchup, but Claydol as well, and Frostlass, and then even Venusaur does decent against Toxicroak. So really, Toxicroak only has a really solid matchup against Alolan Muck, and I think in those situations, a lot of people don't bring Toxicroak, and so Alolan Muck is a very solid safe swap. Also, Frostlass actually does really well against Alolan Muck in the lead, so if people don't know that for this cup, because you're able to get to those avalanches faster, as long as you're shielding the Dark Pulses, you'll be able to win that matchup, which is actually pretty solid for Frostlass, which is why it's so good in this cup. Alright, so going into this matchup, I brought in Azumarill on the back, so this is actually really tricky because Tentacruel is a very hard counter to Azumarill, so I'm just trying to make sure that I get rid of the Tentacruel before that happens, and then I go in quickly with the Azumarill to farm down, and that way I have a slight energy lead on this Clefable, and then Play Rough's going to do neutral damage against Clefable, and I should be able to finish off with Bubbles. If they hit me with this, I think I survive it, but if not, I still have a little Muck too. Yeah, so it would survive the Meteor Mash. Alright, so going to the second match, here comes Venusaur. So a lot of people really don't like Grass Poison or just Grass in general. Well, it has to be Grass Poison, I guess, for this cup, because they just don't think it's useful. However, it's actually really solid. Seeing how much resisted Frenzy Plants hit Dark Poisons is actually really interesting. And also, unless they land a Sludge Wave, you actually have a pretty decent matchup against Alolan Muck. It's not a great counter, but I didn't really want to lose switch advantage here. So I knew I could probably get to another Frenzy Plant in time. So I either force 2 shields or win switch advantage. So I was able to force shields right here, and then they do farm me down. But at this point, I'm just going to go in with my Alolan Muck, absorb all that damage. Gong Shot's probably the worst case scenario here, but especially because they drop Dark Pulse, I'm assuming this is probably going to be a Sludge Wave. And I go quickly and swap. That's a it did take damage. It just you just didn't see through the animation. But now I was able to come in with Froslass, and Froslass could spam so quickly and get to 2 avalanches in time. Yeah, I did try to just farm down the Alolan Muck, because at that point they weren't able to hurt me too much. And then here comes the Claydol, and the Claydol is going to take quite a bit of damage. And then now I can just spam out this Dark Pulse, and I still have a shield advantage. My opponent's running 2 very hard-hitting fast move attackers, so I knew that I was going to be okay. Alright, so going to round 3, going in with Froslass, Alolan Muck, and Azumarill. This is a line I use quite a bit, especially because Froslass has such a good, a lot of win scenarios in the lead, especially if they don't leave their Azumarill or their hard Froslass counter. And the reason why I felt pretty comfortable here is because my opponent's not really running any hard Froslass counters. So at this point, they lock themselves into this Froslass matchup. So I'm going to draw the shield and then swap straight away to Azumarill. I'm able to catch hopefully an Avalanche. So that's going to be pretty huge. And then now I know that I could get to a Play Rough before they could get to a Shadow Ball and another Avalanche. And so that's going to put me in a pretty solid situation. Yeah, so my opponent right here, they don't really have great matchups against Froslass, so that's why I felt really comfortable with that Froslass lead, even though this is kind of tricky because this Tentacruel can pretty much just straight farm me down. I do a quick swap right here, and this is probably going to be Acid Spray. And now I'm anticipating the Alolan Muck. I do quickly throw the Avalanche, because with the Acid Spray I knew I was going to be taken out pretty quickly. But now I have my Alolan Muck, and I know that Alolan Muck can probably survive a Hydro Pump unless I'm debuffed with the Acid Spray. So very unlikely they'll get to Acid Spray and Hydro Pump. So this is likely going to be a Hydro Pump, and I should be able to survive it and snarl down from there. So yeah, so definitely an interesting team. Not a great team for Venusaur here, so that's why I'm not using it. Okay, yeah, so Toxicroak lead. One of the few matches where someone actually does bring a Toxicroak. But yeah, like I said, Toxicroak is not very good against my team right here. And then in this matchup, I'm going in with Froslass, Alolan Muck, and Bronzong. So that Bronzong's going to have a really good matchup with the Toxicroak in the back. And so that's why I'm just going to stay in this matchup. I have an energy lead, so I feel pretty comfortable. I'm just going to spam Avalanches at this point because they're low enough that this is actually going to do quite a bit of damage. Might not KO right away, but soon it'll be within that range. And they actually went for Shadow Ball here too. And then now they quickly swapped in their Alolan Muck. At this point, I'm thinking of just, yeah, I do a quick swap. I guess I could have stayed in right there and just tanked it. But switching to my own Alolan Muck's not a bad idea, because now I'm making sure that this Muck has low health so that the Toxicroak can't really farm much off of me. So I have enough for another Dark Pulse, so that way I can potentially hit the Toxicroak with it, or even go for maybe even a Sludge Wave. Kind of anticipating probably it's going to be Toxicroak. And unfortunately I couldn't get to the Sludge Wave, but that's okay. This Bronzong is able to just straight farm down. Probably a slight misplay though by me, and then expecting the Froslass, I quickly go for the Side Shock, and I can take out the Bronzong the Toxicroak with Confusions. So good games right there. Going into round number 4, I'm going in with Froslass, Alolan Muck, and Azumarill. Like I said earlier, this is actually a line that I use quite a bit, and it's a very strong line for the most part. Things to consider by the time I post this video is that Weedle Community Day will be over, so Beedrill is going to be in play, and Beedrill is definitely a solid Azumarill counter, and does pretty well against Alolan Muck as well, so definitely something to watch out for. However, I think that's going to bring more utility to Bronzong here, and yeah, and Venusaur might struggle a little bit too there, but I think there's definitely still ways to play around that matchup. Alright, so going here, I'm probably just going to go straight Sludge Wave and try to land it. My opponent's probably going to farm me down right after this though, so that's not a great situation to be in. However, I have my own Azumarill, so I'm going to be able to absorb all this damage. But they did farm quite a bit, and they are running Play Rough. Most Azumarills are running Play Rough and Hydro Pump. Another reason why I really like Venusaur, because there's not really a big move to threaten it besides Hydro Pump. But that's going to take way longer to get to than Ice Beam. So I'm in a slightly tricky situation here, because they're ahead on quite a bit of health and energy. So I actually go for a swap into my Froslass, and then what I probably should have done is maybe baited, but unfortunately they went straight for the shield. I'm going to shield this. I think if I went for Avalanche instead, it might be a little better because these confusions are starting to hurt. Yeah, and now I unfortunately can't. Well, I guess I should have gone for Shadow Ball, but I was trying to catch this charge move right here, and I do, luckily. However, these powder stones are going to take a while, and unfortunately, I'm taking too much damage from the confusions, and I can't keep up pace right there. So, GG's for the first match. Going to the second one, I go in with a Azumarill, Frostlass, and Alolan Muck. So, Azumarill is definitely a strong counter to Frostlass. So definitely not a bad situation for me to be in. Worst case scenario, if they end up potentially double shielding, I will be able to just come in and potentially farm down quite a bit with the Alolan Muck. So I'm going to go straight play rough because the Ice Beam is definitely going to be resisted. They do go for the double shield, so it's not terrible. So I believe I let this one go, and they end up baiting with Avalanche, so that's actually a pretty solid situation. And then I quickly go in for the Ice Beam, just because I don't know what it is, but I figured it might have been a counter. And then I'm going to bring in my Frostlass right here. So not a great situation, but because I know I can get the Avalanche pretty quickly, I'm going to farm up a little extra energy. And because their Frostlass just threw some of their energy, I should be able to get to an Avalanche pretty quickly. And then, unfortunately, they do, I guess this is a Shadow Ball. Yeah, they do get to Shadow Ball in time, but this puts me in a good Alolan Muck farm down situation. And so now I have quite a bit of energy, and then unless they're running Toxicroak, which, like I said, most people don't usually against my team, it puts me in a good spot. And so I was able to take out the Bronzong right here, which is good. And we're going to be able to go to game 3. All right, so game 3, I'm bringing the spice this time. I'm bringing in Venusaur, Frostlass, and Claydol. And so Venusaur, as you can see in a lot of these matches, aren't even matched up against Azumarill or another type of water like Tentacruel or Bibarel, and it still does decent. So I'm going to show you kind of how that's going to go right here. So they do go for Sludge Wave, so this gives me a little bit more time to farm up a little more energy. And I believe I double shield right here, and they go for Dark Pulse, so not great, but not terrible. Okay, and then they go in for Frostlass. Frostlass has to shield these Frenzy Plants, which is why it's actually a really solid matchup. This Frostlass doesn't shield the Frenzy Plant, which is really interesting. And then luckily I was able to catch this Avalanche on my own Frostlass. That puts me really in a good spot. So they do take me out with a Alolan Muck right here. And because I played all, I'm just going to go and farm it down with Mud Slabs. I'm not going to be able to get hit by Dark Pulse because they just spent their energy. And then it's a Toxicroak. So really good for me. Like I said, a lot of people don't bring Toxicroak against my team. And I am able to catch this Mud Bomb right here. It's going to take out my Venusaur. But at this point, I should be able to just Mud Slap down. Even a Mud Bomb won't be able to do that much. They should go Sludge Bomb, which is kind of interesting. But either way. Claydol was able to clean that up. So great match right there. Going to round number 5. So currently 4-0. Also going against R. Sanchez, who's 4-0 as well. And so we go into the Frostlass Mirror. This is kind of tricky. And so let's see what they do. We both kind of bait with the Avalanche. And at this point, I shield the Shadow Ball. And then let's see if they shield or think I'm baiting as well. And so they don't. So this is a really good situation for me. But this Skuntank is going to kind of build up quite a bit of energy against me. And they do shield. Yeah, I don't know if the swap was the best idea or not here. But at least now I have my Frostlass. I can take it out. The tricky thing is I have Azumarill. And Azumarill has a pretty bad matchup against Skuntank. Especially if it's running Sludge Bomb. If it's not running Sludge Bomb, I might be okay, but a lot tend to run Sludge Bomb in this cup. And, ooh, this is actually not a great situation because now this Skuntank can farm me down. And so this Skuntank has pretty much 100 energy. And I think I'm going to try to go for a quick swap. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to. I was going to bring in the Frostlass and swap straight to Azumarill. But now they're going to come and hit me with the Sludge Bomb. Not great. I'm trying to potentially bubble down, get to the Ice Beam. Unfortunately, I think we CMP tied there and able to land the Sludge Bomb. So really well played by R. Sanchez. And then now I'm going in with Alolan Muck versus Frostlass and Azumarill. So the thing here is my opponent actually has a really interesting team, and it's very tough for me to play into. I can't really bring Venusaur because Hypno and Noctowl have pretty solid matchups, and Skuntank does pretty well too with the Poison Jabs. Alolan Muck is a little more doable because it's using Snarl, so and just doesn't hit nearly as hard, and has to land the sludge waves. But yeah, and that puts me in a tricky situation. Oh man, and I unfortunately I overfarmed right here, which is actually really disastrous for me. So, and then I come in with Frostlass. Frostlass can tank the body slams pretty well, so that's kind of why I was hoping to just get quite a bit of energy on Frostlass. Frostlass with energy is usually okay, but realizing that I can't just powder snow down this Munchlax is going to put me in a really bad spot. Yeah, so Skuntank, not great. I have a Zoomer in the back, so I am able to catch this potential Avalanche. But the problem is I still have to deal with the Skuntank. And Skuntank is definitely kind of a thorn in my side here. Claydol is a really solid counter, but the problem is Claydol doesn't have great matchup against Hypno, nor does it have good matchup against Frostlass or Noctowl, Munchlax. So it's kind of a risky play right here. So my opponent played this really well, and it doesn't really matter if I shield this here. They're not going to be able to. I'm not going to be able to get to a second Avalanche before they get to a second Crunch. And yeah, and so that's the match right there. So really well played by R. Sanchez. So that was my first loss of the tournament. Going to round 6, playing against Auburn. Auburn's actually a local of mine, a good friend, and he's actually really solid. And he tends to do more local tournaments, but this is definitely a big tournament he was in, and we were both 4-1 at this point. And the big thing here is in our local tournament, he swept me 3-0, so with the same team, I believe. So I was definitely a little nervous coming into this. All right, so I am going in with Azumarill, Alolan Muck, and Frostlass. He does double shield his Frostlass, but because Alolan Muck swapped in first, I'm able to outpace him to my charge moves. I think I probably could have farmed up one more Snarl, but I just want to be safe because that energy generation from Frostlass is pretty quick. And then this is probably going to be a Crunch. Oh, it's actually a Sludge Bomb. But I was able to survive it and drop the Sludge Wave, which puts me in a pretty solid spot. And then I quickly swap in my Frostlass right here. I know that I could tank a Crunch, and it looked like maybe he overfarmed a little bit. Oh no, he swapped in his Azumarill, so that's actually a solid play. But I should be able to survive the play rough and now just farm energy and now have enough for Avalanche. And Frostlass is usually going to win CMP there, I think. So he's farmed me down right here, and then what I'm going to do right here is bring in Azumarill, but quickly swap to Alolan Muck. And luckily I was able to catch the charge move right here, and it ends up being a Sludge Bomb too, so that's really solid. I think I would have been okay with the Azumarill regardless, but I wanted to play a little safe there. Alright, so going to the second matchup. This is actually a pretty key thing in lead matchups, is you can swap out now when you CMP. And so I'm going to drop the Avalanche, draw a shield, and swap to Azumarill. And so now I'm going to be able to catch a charge move from Auburn, and unfortunately it was an Avalanche, or fortunately I guess. But now he's down a shield, and I was able to soak up all that damage with my Azumarill. And he goes for a Shadow Punch right here. He doesn't shield the Haunter, so that actually puts me in a pretty solid situation. And now I assume he probably has a Skuntank. And so that's going to be able to farm me down. I'm going to drop the Ice Beam though. But I feel very comfortable at this point because I have my Alolan Muck still, so I could absorb all this damage. I have a shield advantage, and I still have my Frostlass that can match up with his Frostlass in the back. And so I do go for the Dark Pulse. It doesn't really matter if he swaps out on me right here because Dark Pulse is still not great for Frostlass, so I'm not too worried about that potential of potentially backfiring. I do quickly swap into my Frostlass right there because I didn't want, I wanted to be able to farm him down a little bit, and he doesn't shield the Frostlass. Sorry, my camera footage cut out right there. But what I was saying is Auburn's only win condition right there was to hope that I was baiting and letting the Avalanche go. So GG's to him. And now I'm going into the final match with Claydol, Alolan Muck, and Frostlass. And I'm thinking, okay, Claydol does pretty well against 4 out of the 6 Pokemon on his team. However, the big mistake I really made is that Claydol is kind of tricky against the Azumarill and Frostlass teams, which a lot of people tend to have. And unless I match it up perfectly with their Dark Poison, it's just not going to be able to do that well. So I am going to Wind Switch advantage right here in all likelihood. They do shield, so that's not terrible. But this Claydol is going to do very little against this Alolan Muck, unfortunately. So I should come in with the Frostlass to get a slight energy lead. and it's going to be against the opposing player's Frostlass, and we're going to go for the Avalanche, see if they go for the bait. They do, which is pretty solid. And then now I'm going to shield, thinking it might be Shadow Ball. They unfortunately bait with Avalanche, so that's not a great situation to be in. I go for the Shadow Ball right here, and then this is kind of tricky. So I kind of make a mistake here looking back, so you'll see in a second. So I do quickly swap into Claydol, and they're going to be able to take me out with Hydro Pump. I'm thinking, okay, Hydro Pump could one-shot, but unfortunately it doesn't one-shot, and now this Azumarill has even more farm, and now I can't get to the Shadow Ball. So that's very unfortunate. Had they had to drop the Play Rough, it might have been okay. I don't know. It's hard to get to Earth Power with much shots, or Mud Slaps. Alright, going into the second matchup, I go in with Frostlass against Alolan Muck. Usually this is a pretty solid situation because I can outpace the Alolan Muck, and they don't shield. So I'm going to shield right here. Okay, thinking that I could probably farm up a little bit more and then drop the Avalanche, but they had two back-to-back. That's unfortunate. And then I pressed the Avalanche, and I think they swapped to their Frostlass as well. So this is a pretty bad situation, to be honest. Although I think it might have been better if they just tanked the Avalanche with their Alolan Muck, but they probably thought I was going to farm down after that. So anyway, either way, this puts me in a really bad situation because 2 shields to 0 is a really bad situation in Sorcerous. Fortunately, I was able to take down 1 shield, but now they could just farm down my Azu, and I'm just kind of expecting, I don't know, their Azu to come out, and then so now I'm going to bring in my Frostlass right here and drop the Shadow Ball, but they smartly choose not to shield, thinking that if I have a Alolan Muck, they're going to need to shield the Sludge Wave. Ooh, so very tough situation for me to be in, unfortunately. Especially if this Azumarill is running Hydro Pump, and like I said before, most Azumarills are running Hydro Pump with Play Rough. Definitely merit to running that, and then they do a sack swap into the Alolan Muck, so this is pretty much GG's. I need to get to a Dark Pulse and then a Sludge Wave as well to win this. Very unlikely, and they don't shield, which is very shocking. Yeah, that's interesting. I guess they were counting, but if that was a Sludge Wave, that would have been tricky, but who knows. Anyway, so going to the match number 3. So I already lost this one 0-2, but I just want to show this match number 3 on how to use Venusaur in the lead. And I really should use the strategy more often. A lot of people like to lead Frostlass. And so something that people don't realize is that Venusaur usually wins CMP against Frostlass. It takes the same amount of time to get to Frenzy Plan as it does to Avalanche. And the big difference is who wins the matchup. Venusaur, which shields up, Venusaur wins if they have CMP. And usually Venusaurs have higher attacks than Frostlass, but it is a little IV dependent. If you have a very high attack Frostlass, you might lose that situation. However, I was looking at his Frostlass, and the Frostlass wasn't maxed to 15. So I'm going to shield this Hydro Pump right here, but so that made me feel pretty comfortable leading Venusaur and going for CMP, and then going for the CMP swap to my Azumarill, because in all situations they're going to go Avalanche, so you could absorb quite a bit of damage. I do just aggressively switch back to my Venusaur to farm down the Azumarill, because I'm not worried about any Ice Beam. I do shield the Hydro Pump though, because that does quite a bit of damage. But as you can see, my opponent's Alolan Muck is weakened by quite a bit. I'm just going to tank whatever this is, and it's going to be a Dark Pulse. And then now I have quite a bit of energy for this Frostlass. I'm already ahead on a lot of energy at this point. And then I quickly go in and swap in with my Azumarill. I'm not going to shield this. It's going to be an Avalanche, but I'm going to land the Ice Beam right here. It's going to do a little damage, but not enough. I could pretty much shield this and then farm down the Frostlass. Mainly want to bring my Azumarill because I knew that Azumarill had a little better matchup than Alolan Muck. And then now just straight farm down with Snarls. Looking back on it, I probably should have brought Venusaur even more than I did, because I really didn't run into Noctowls, Bronzons, or Hypnos very often. Like I mentioned with Beedrill Community, Venusaur might be slightly harder to use. However, I think if you bring in Confusion users like Bronzon or Hypno, and even Mudslap Claydol, you can definitely help counter some of that. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and a big shout out and thank you to all of my patrons. If you are personally interested in some exclusive content, I'll link my Patreon down below so you can check it out. If you liked the video, feel free to give it a like and share, subscribe for future content, and I'll see you all next time.